Now, we're supposed to be in the business of making highly accurate missiles that either are powered or glide. Go trace that red path on the, yes. They won't fly ballistically, so it's going to be very difficult to defend against these things. I mean, we'll figure it out, I suppose, but it's going to take a few weeks. And these things will be as precise, and they'll be quick. They'll be really expensive initially on the basis of how many miles they have to fly. The shorter range ones won't be as expensive, and maybe they'll be more numerous. But this is the long-term offensive missile program, if you will. Now let's go to the next chart. That then brings into play three theories or three predictions that James Digby's paper made that we have to now start thinking about. In major wars, he said known military targets could all be hit in a matter of days or weeks. So what that means is in future wars, let's say if we fought a war against, I don't know, what do they call it? A revisionist power. Fill in the blank. What would happen is both sides might have these weapons that were non-nuclear, that were precise, that could go through missile defenses and could probably penetrate a lot of passive defense. Not all, but a lot. That would be, concrete or buried targets. And you would, in a matter of days or weeks, probably days, exhaust all the targets you could see. Now, there'd be a lot you couldn't see, but the military targets would be done. And then the question would be, what happens next? Now, Digby worried that to end the war, someone would say, well, I'm going to roll out a nuclear weapon and just, whack a city. And that should get everybody's attention to sue for peace. Alternatively, he said, it might result in a pause in activities that would lead to negotiation. Now, that's the question of the day. Let's go to the next slide. Now, Mr. Sagan has done this kind of analysis several times. It's not surprising, but if you ask the average American, if somebody hurt 2,000 Americans on an aircraft carrier or hit a base and 500 people were killed, what should we do? Oh, well, 60% say, let's take out a nuke and destroy Tehran, or pick your other city, whatever it is. And then the sort of hard-headed, more practical types say, oh, well, let's just kill 100,000 civilians conventionally. I think, having been in games with civilian officials and military officials, it isn't just the average American that thinks this. This is the instinct of an awful lot of political appointees and career civil servants, I hate to tell you. Let's hit the next slide. Can you hear me? Next slide. Oh, there it is. Okay. Now this, I read every day for several hours because I'm just fascinated about what you can find if you just keep reading on things you're interested in. I don't think more than 10 people know about this article, but it was a pretty big headline. I don't know, what was it in? It was in, I don't know. It was in a service kind of magazine. Anyway, Esper refers to the Secretary of Defense. He is very earnest about getting a study done that would reduce civilian casualties and have policies to really do more to reduce them. I wonder what that's going to look like. It's not yet done, but he feels that we need to do more to reduce collateral damage. That's interesting because I've had private conversations with some pretty hard-headed people, old and young, who say, well, yeah, we're going to run out of targets and we need to be able to drop a megaton weapon of some sort, on the adversary cities to get them to cease and desist. Now, you will not find that probably written in any Air Force guidance. This brings us to the next slide. So what might we still need to figure out? Are there non-military targets, if any, that should be held at risk to get the war to stop? Cities? Well, we just talked about that. sympathetic targets? You know, do you pick the, do you threaten to do something dastardly, like make a radiation leak occur at a reactor? What about a chemical refinery? Do you hit the parking lot first to make the message? Do you actually follow through? What about lines of communication? You know, the roads, the rail lines, the riverine communication systems, or better yet, you know, how about the centers of political control or points, targets of political significance beyond a nation's capital? Do you want to get into this? What is the objective? Is it to punish and cause pain to make them say uncle? Or is it to threaten to do things that might make the political control no longer possible? And if that's the case, would that help or strengthen your ability to deter the war in the first place? Now, that may sound a little risque, but if you remember the Cold War, that is essentially what happened during our effort deploying INF missiles. We finally got a source of intelligence to dump what he knew as a Russian into our hands, and we figured out where to aim the missiles that we deployed, the Pershing IIs in particular, to knock out all of the major military command centers, because we knew where they were, because he told us where they were. And when the Russians discovered that, guess what? That produced agreement to get rid of all of their INF missiles. They weren't haggling after that. Well, I mean, is that what we need to do? Do we need to, you know, to get arms control and to deter war? Do we need to do that? Don't know. Would agreeing not to use nuclear weapons against cities be a bottom line? You know, would that make sense? Because we have a policy, we claim not to do it. We're less urbanized than our revisionist potential adversaries. Is that a narrative you want to have, even if you can't get an agreement? Next slide. Okay, well, I thought it'd be cute. What we need is a renaissance in thinking about counter-value targeting. I don't think we should go back to the Second World War. I don't think we should go back to the Cold War. I think we need to figure this out, because an awful lot of people's lives may be at stake if we don't. And that brings the very last slide, which two things you can read and watch that will help you challenge yourself to try to figure out the answers. I'm done.